Hi there, and welcome to the Paletteful Packs YouTube channel. My name is Alice, and I have the June Paletteful Packs right here in front of me. So let's open it up. So immediately I can see some pastels. That is so exciting. So let's move some of these fun yellow paper crinkles. So the first thing that I'm seeing in here is this General's Multi-Pastel Compressed Chalk Sticks. These come in the primary colors, red, yellow, green, and blue. Well, green's not a primary color, but it's good to have. And these are extra smooth, pure pigment and compressed pastel sticks. So it looks like we've got some dry media for sure. Going along with that, we have the General's Multi-Pastel Compressed Chalk, and this is the gray tone, so there's white all the way down to black. They're most conveniently used by breaking into smaller pieces, and you can use the flat edge for broad strokes. You can also sand them to a fine point, and you can blend them with like a paper stub, something like that. The next thing that I see in here is a 2-color pan pastel set. Oh my goodness, I'm stoked. I have seen pan pastels over the years all over Instagram, and I've never had the chance to try them. If you haven't heard of pan pastels are ultra soft pastels that come actually in pans, and you can apply them with these like soft sponges and things. I've seen people apply them in a bunch of different ways. And it also comes with a little booklet which kind of helps you learn how to use the pan pastels. You can also use a colorless blender on this or mix it with white. And it comes in this cute stackable packaging that like twists off, which I really enjoy. The next thing I see in here is some sponges along with a little like tool and some sponges to put on the end. So this will be very useful for using with the pan pastels as well as to blend out the multi-pastels. Then the next thing that we have in here is a velour board. This is 8 by 10 and this is specifically made for like pastels. So it has a unique velveted texture. This is really cool. It feels so soft and velvety and it's ideal for pastels, oil pastels, and charcoal. So I am very excited to try this. And the last thing in the box is the Strathmore pastel paper. This is their 400 series. It is their best series. There are 24 9 by 12 sheets in this, and they have a nice textured finish for pastels. Okay, so this is everything that comes in the June 2019 Premier Pack, which is the Pan Pastel Pack. I can't wait to dive into trying these, so I'm gonna go get some ideas and then we'll be back to make some art. So I decided to start out by playing with the Strathmore pastel paper pad just to get used to using some of the supplies and the tools. My inspiration for the first piece that I did was the week 1 June Paletteful prompt, which was sky. So I had a photo of the sky I'd taken on my cell phone. I just kind of used it as a reference. Colorado has beautiful skies, so I was excited about this prompt. The first supplies that I started out with were the General pencil pastels, the gray and the primary tones, mostly the blues and the grays. I started out using those to block in the areas, and I kept it very, very loose to start with. These pencils are definitely more firm than the pan pastels, so you can be a little bit more rough with them. I did try like breaking one off to try to use a smaller piece to see how helpful that was. But I found that I mostly enjoyed them full length and I used a lot of them on their sides. As you can see, I'm doing that right now. I had the primary colors as since I wanted some more purples in my sky, I was able to use the reds and the blues together to kind of add some purple. And once I started having the kind of like values established, I went in with the pan pastel. So the first pan pastel I used was the blue, and I used the larger sponge with it to sort of start laying things out. And I want to talk a little bit about these sponges. So they're by Soft Tools, and they're apparently like micro pore sponges. So they're designed to like hold and release the right amount of color. They are very different than other sponges I've used in the past. They're really, really smooth and nice, and they worked really, really well with it. The other thing that I noticed about the pan pastels was it mentioned that they can be erased by all different kinds of erasers. So I tried a bunch of erasers on this to help define the cloud edges. So this is just my kind of like stick eraser that I'm using right now, and I use that to define some edges and pull back in some highlights. And then it was just a matter of continually building up and up the layers of color, going back in with the gray tones, like the darker black, in order to put that in as a base to darken things up. And then I would go back over with the pan pastels and the regular pastels and start blending everything together to create these darker, more contrasted tones. I really enjoyed working with the pan pastels. They are so pigmented and beautiful and soft, and they layer up really, really nicely. I was doing some research on them and all the different things that you can do with them, such as using a white mixer, a colorless blender, and you can even use liquid on top of it after it's been put on the paper, and you're supposed to mix the water with like 25% rubbing alcohol. That's what their website says. So there's a bunch of different things you can do and different techniques that you can use. I started out by just using these kind of as traditional pastels because I feel like that is probably going to be the most common way of using them, and I've used pastels before, so that felt a little less intimidating to me. So yeah, the pan pastels are absolutely beautiful. They are so soft. I really enjoyed using the little sponge knife. I felt like I had a lot of control over where I was placing the pastel colors. And I kind of was like, ooh, I kind of want more of these. Like, I think this would be really nice. One of the things that had been mentioned was to use these for an underpainting, because other materials will actually go right on top of the pan pastels, no problem. So I thought that was a really, really interesting concept as well. I'm going back in with all the different supplies, especially the general pencils, because they had more of a sharper edge to really define some areas of the clouds, define the highlights, or the shadows, excuse me, and to also define the areas of sky that were peeking out. I was starting to feel more comfortable with the pastels by this point and how they actually worked, which was the intent of this piece. It was so that I could get used to how these kind of like supplies worked and how they blended and what's the best way to use them before I jumped into trying the velour surface, which I didn't want to mess up because I only had one of them and it's such a cool surface. So this was kind of my getting used to pastels piece. And now we're gonna go ahead and try this really cool black velvety paper. So I definitely wanted to try both surfaces in this video because this paper, it's called velour board, and it is so interesting. It is so soft and smooth. It really does feel like velvet, and it says that this surface is ideal for pastels, oil pastels, chalks, and charcoal. So it really is made for this kind of stuff. So I was super stoked to try it. For this piece, I decided to draw my cactus. I am very into plants right now. And with the color selection that I was given with the blue and the yellow, being able to mix those to make green, it made the most sense to do something that would work well with the color palette. Also, my cactus has a yellow flower on it. So I started with the body of the cactus, and I tried to use the black of the paper to help add depth to my shadows, and then mostly add color to my highlights. I used the yellow and blue pan pastel mostly to build up those greens, and then added in like details and highlights with the generals pastels. One thing I really liked about the pan pastels was it was a really easy way for me to start quickly defining highlights, as I did right here with the cactus flower. I used the yellow, which was, again, as you can see, it is so vibrant and pigmented. I mean, that is yellow on black. It's really hard to find yellow that is that pigmented, so that was a really nice surprise for me. I used the red to help shade the yellow, and then I added in a little bit of black over the top just to darken that even more since I didn't have brown. One of the things that I personally like to use when I use pastels, and have always enjoyed this ever since I used pastels in college, is to use like more unusual, brighter colors for the shading. I just think it looks really beautiful when you use pastels, and you can get away with it a little bit more, so I was happy to do that. These little generals pencils were really nice for all of the details because they do have a really sharp edge. They're very firm. So it really enabled me to get a lot more detail in the piece that I might not have been able to get with just the knife and the pan pastels, which was really important when I was adding in little spikes on the cactus. And I think it's those little sharp details that really help to make your piece stand out. One thing I would recommend when you're working with pastels, especially with these pan pastels, is to really vary the amount, like your edges. So some of your edges are going to be very, very soft and blended with the pastels. But if you add in some harder edges and more crisp edges in certain appropriate places, it can add an extra level of detail and depth to your piece, and as well as adding some extra visual interest and helping to provide contrast as well as establishing depth of field. So varying your lines, like whether your lines are soft or hard, can actually be really, really useful. I worked on the vase that this is in. It's actually in a mug, and perspective is not my strong point, so I think the perspective on this cup is a little bit off, but I still had fun anyway. I started out by using the pan pastels and the medium-sized sponge to lay out the colors. I used the yellow for a highlight and the blue for a shadow because the cup was kind of green. So then I added in a lot of the red actually to try to tone down the green, and it was also more of a pale color, so I added in a lot of white over the top because I really wanted to tone that down, and since it was on black paper, that was something that was a little bit more difficult. For the soil inside, I actually started out with a base of black, and then I added in highlights of blue and red because visually when you look at it, it just kind of blurs together into a slightly browned soil. A lot of pastels are about visual blending, so when you look at it, what do you see? You don't necessarily see all of the individual colors, but they visually blend together in your mind to create something else. So that's something that I really worked with in this piece. So we're starting to wind up on this piece. I'm just finishing out the details of the cup, and I'm really happy with how both my pieces came out. It was really enjoyable to work with these pastels. I've wanted to try these pan pastels for so long, so I hope that you guys really enjoy them as well when you get your Paletteful Packs Premier Pack. If you are interested in getting your own box and you're not already subscribed, then make sure you check us out. Down in the description box, there will be a link to our website if that's something you think you might be interested in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see whenever we upload new demo videos. I hope that you guys enjoy your June Paletteful Packs. I cannot wait to see what all of you create over on social media. Thank you again so much for watching this video, and have a great day. Bye guys!